12 minutes. That's how long it took for an ambulance to arrive after Marcus Hamilton and his wife collapsed on their kitchen floor. For 12 agonizing minutes, Marcus was on the phone with a 911 operator. A stranger's calm voice, his only lifeline as his world fell apart. One moment, his wife Jennifer was making dinner. The next, she was unconscious, unresponsive. Their 2 young children, 8-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Liam, were crying in the next room, terrified. With shaking hands, Marcus dialed 911. A professional voice answered, 911. What's your emergency? The words tumbled out of Marcus. A torrent of panic. My wife, she collapsed. She's not waking up. The operator, a woman, tried to calm him, asking for his location. Where's the ambulance? What do I do? Play that. She told him an ambulance was on its way and asked if Jennifer was breathing normally. I don't know, she's just breathing, he stammered. The operator's questions were precise. Any unusual sounds, like gurgling or wheezing? No, just breathing. Please hurry, Marcus begged. My kids are here. They're scared. The operator promised help was coming and asked him to check for a pulse. I don't know how, Marcus yelled, his fear turning to frustration. Just send someone. The operator's voice never wavered. She patiently guided him, her words a steady hand in the chaos. Sir, I understand you're frightened. I need you to help your wife until paramedics arrive. She instructed him to place his fingers on Jennifer's neck, just below the jawbone. He followed her directions, his hands trembling. I feel something, he whispered. A flicker of hope. Is that a pulse? That's good. That's very good, the operator affirmed. Next, she had him roll Jennifer onto her side into the recovery position, a crucial step in case she vomited. He did it, feeling a small sense of control return. Okay. Done, he said, his voice strained. Where's the ambulance? How long? The answer shattered him. They're approximately 12 minutes out, sir. 12 minutes? It felt like a death sentence. Are you kidding me? He shouted into the phone. My wife is unconscious. 12 minutes. Might be too late. The operator explained there had been a major accident on the highway, tying up multiple units. The nearest available ambulance was on its way, racing to his home. But her explanation did little to soothe his rising terror. That's not good enough. What if she dies because your ambulances are busy? The operator professional gently pulled his focus back. Sir, I need you to focus on your wife right now. Is she still breathing? He checked. Yes, but she's so pale. The operator's voice was a constant presence. Datese. Okay. Keep monitoring her breathing. Talk to her. Let her know you're there. Those 12 minutes were the longest of Marcus's life. Each tick of the clock was a hammer blow of fear. He stayed on the line, the operator's voice a thin thread connecting him to help that felt impossibly far away. He talked to Jennifer, his voice cracking, telling her he was there, that help was coming, that he loved her. He watched her chest rise and fall, his own breath catching with every beat of his heart. The fear was a physical thing, a weight pressing down on him, suffocating him. He was alone with his unconscious wife and terrified children, a disembodied voice, his only guide. Finally, the wail of sirens grew louder, and the flashing lights painted his windows red and blue. Paramedics rushed in, their movements swift and confident. They took Colbert, assessing Jennifer, starting on Cuarto and loading her onto a gurney. Marcus grabbed his kids, following the team out to the ambulance. Is she going to be okay? He asked, his voice raw. We're doing everything we can. A paramedic replied before the doors slammed shut. The ambulance sped away, its siren fading into the night. Marcus stood in the driveway, his children clinging to his legs, the silence in the wake of the ambulance deafening. He was still holding the phone. The operator's voice came through. Sir, the paramedics have your wife. You can hang up now. And that's when the dam of his composure finally broke. The fear and helplessness that had been building for 12 minutes erupted into pure, unadulterated rage. 12 minutes, he spat into the phone. 12 minutes. Do you have any idea how terrifying it was to watch my wife lie there while you told me to stay calm? My wife could have died because your system is broken. Because you people can't do your jobs properly. The operator tried to interject. Sir, I understand you're upset. But Marcus cut her off. Upset, I'm furious. You're supposed to save lives, but all you did was keep me on the phone while she was dying. You were useless. Completely useless. He didn't wait for a response. He hung up, his body shaking with a toxic mix of rage and terror. He called a neighbor to watch the kids and sped to the hospital. The operator's calm instructions and the ticking clock were playing in his mind. At the hospital, the news was miraculously good. Jennifer was okay. She'd had a seizure, her first ever. Doctors ran tests but found no immediate cause for alarm. They kept her overnight for observation, but the crisis had passed. She was safe. Marcus sat by her bedside, holding her hand, the relief washing over him in waves, so powerful it almost brought him to his knees. The rage he'd felt had cooled, replaced by an exhausted gratitude. Later that week, a letter arrived. It was from the county emergency services. Marcus almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of him. Inside was a commendation. It was for him. It detailed his actions during the 911 call, how he had followed instructions, checked for a pulse, and placed his wife in the recovery position. The letter stated that his calm actions under extreme pressure had been critical in ensuring his wife's safety until paramedics arrived. And then he saw it. The letter was co-signed by the shift supervisor and the operator who had taken his call. Her name was Sarah. Suddenly, those 12 minutes looked different. The operator wasn't a useless voice. She was his guide. She wasn't just telling him to stay calm. She was empowering him to act. The questions she asked, the instructions she gave, they weren't just a script. They were a strategy. She had turned his panic into purpose. She had kept him focused, not for her sake, but for Jennifer's. His anger dissolved, replaced by a profound sense of shame, and then gratitude. He had called her useless. He had screamed at the one person who had stood with him in the darkest 12 minutes of his life. Marcus knew he had to make it right. He found the non-emergency number for the dispatch center and asked to speak to Sarah. When she came on the line, her voice was just as he remembered, calm and professional. He took a deep breath. Sarah, this is Marcus Hamilton, my wife. You took my call. The other night, there was a brief pause. I remember, Mr. Hamilton. I hope your wife is doing well. She is, Marcus said, his own voice thick with emotion. She's home. She's okay. And I need to apologize. The things I said to you. They were horrible and unfair. I was scared and angry, and I took it out on you. But you weren't useless. You were the opposite of useless. You are my anchor. You helped me save her. I read the letter. You OP'd me. And I just wanted to say thank you. And I am so sorry. There was another silence on the line, longer this time. When Sarah finally spoke, her professional calm had softened. Mr. Hamilton, she said, her voice gentle. You don't need to apologize. We understand. We know people call us on the worst day of their lives. We're trained for it. But thank you. It means a lot to hear you say that. It really does. In that moment, Marcus understood. Sarah, and thousands of operators like her, are the unseen, unheard heroes of our emergencies. They are the calm in the storm, the steady voice in the darkness, guiding us through moments of sheer terror. They don't just dispatch help. They are the first line of help. Marcus's story is a powerful reminder of the incredible pressure these dispatchers face every single day. They are the first responders we never see. So next time you think of our emergency services, remember the voice on the other end of the line. Remember Sarah. Thank you for watching. If you were moved by this story, please like and subscribe for more content that highlights the hidden heroes among us. Marcus couldn't shake the anger. 12 minutes. That's how long it took. 12 minutes of sheer terror while some operator on the phone told him to stay calm. While his wife, Jennifer, lay unconscious on their kitchen floor. The system had failed him. That operator had failed him. He filed a complaint the very next day. He wrote a scathing review of the emergency services online, warning everyone, He told anyone who would listen about the incompetent 911 operator who took a full 12 minutes to send an ambulance. He never once stopped to think about what it might have been like for her on the other end of that phone, listening to his raw panic, trying to do her job while he screamed at her, calling her names he wouldn't dare repeat. He never thought about her at all. Until 3 weeks later, when he needed her again. The call came into Rachel Morrison's console at 4:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. Rachel had been a 911 dispatcher for 8 years. In that time, she'd taken thousands of calls. She had talked people through heart attacks, strokes, horrific car accidents, assaults, house fires, and overdoses. She had heard every conceivable type of human fear and pain. She'd been yelled at, cursed at, and blamed when things went wrong. It was just part of the job. She remembered the man from 3 weeks ago, the one who called her a useless. Well, she remembered. It wasn't personal. Sig now that it wasn't about her. He was terrified for his wife. People say terrible things when they're terrified. Rachel understood that on an intellectual level, but she'd still gone home that night and cried anyway. Because even when you understand it's not personal, the words still land. The abuse still stings. But she came back. The next day, and the day after that. Because people needed help. Because she was good at her job. And because someone had to be there to answer when people called 911 in the absolute worst moments of their lives. The phone rang. Rachel put on her headset. The familiar way to strange comfort. 911. What's your emergency? My son, he's choking. He can't breathe. The voice was instantly familiar. Marcus Hamilton. The same address popped up on her screen. Without a moment's hesitation, Rachel's training took over. All personal feelings vanished. Sir, how old is your son? 5. He's 5. He's turning blue. The panic in his voice was a razor's edge. Is he conscious? Yes, he's trying to cough, but nothing's coming out. Okay, sir. I need you to listen to me very carefully. We're going to do the Heimlich maneuver. Do you know how to do that? I know I. Don't just send someone. Hurry. I am sending help right now, but you need to start helping your son immediately. Every single second counts. Can you do that for me? Yes, she's just. Tell me what to do. Rachel dispatched the ambulance van minutes out this time. No accidents on the route. Clear roads, and then focused her entire being on Marcus Hamilton and his choking son. Okay, stand behind your son. Put your arms around his waist. Make a fist with one hand and place it just above his belly button. Now, grab that fist with your other hand. Can you do that? You seem doing it. His voice was strained. Now give quick, upward thrusts. Hard, don't be afraid to use force. You're trying to force the air from his lungs to dislodge whatever's blocking his airway. It's a cooled air, Marcus grunting with effort over the line. She heard the awful, strained, choking sounds from the 5-year-old. It was a sound that turned a parent's blood to ice. It's not working. Nothing's coming out. He yelled, his voice cracking. Keep going, Rachel commanded, her tone firm, but calm. 5 thrusts. Then check if he can breathe. Don't give up on me. Don't give up on him. Rachel had walked dozens of people through this exact procedure. She knew it by heart. But she also knew how utterly terrifying it was for a parent using significant force on their child's small body. Hearing those awful sounds, feeling like they were causing harm instead of helping. Again, she said, her voice a lifeline in his sea of panic. 5 more thrusts. You can do this, sir. Your son needs you right now. Please, please. Marcus was sobbing now. He's going to die. My son is going to die. He is not going to die, Rachel said with unwavering certainty. You are helping him. Keep going. 5 more thrusts. Now. She heard the renewed effort, heard Marcus counting through his tears. 1-2, -3, -4, -5. And then a different sound. A wet cough. A sharp, sputtering gasp. And then the most beautiful sound in the world. A child crying. Loudly. He's breathing. He's breathing. Oh my God. He's breathing. Marcus's sobs turned from despair to overwhelming relief. Rachel felt that familiar, powerful rush that came with these moments. The one that made all the bad calls, all the abuse, worth it. That's excellent. What came out? A hay toy, a small toy piece. It came out. He's coughing, but he's breathing. Perfect, Rachel said, her voice softening. The ambulance is just 3 minutes away. I want you to keep your son calm. Keep him sitting up. And just monitor his breathing. Can you do that? Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. The gratitude in his voice was thick. A silence hung in the air for a moment. Marcus knew. He knew it was her. He didn't have to ask. I'm so sorry, he stammered, the words catching in his throat. About before. About what I said. I was scared, and I was wrong. I know you were scared, Rachel replied gently. Help is almost there. She stayed on the line with him, a calm presence, until the paramedics arrived and she heard their voices in the background. When she finally disconnected the call, Rachel took a deep breath. She looked around the dispatch center, at her colleagues taking their own calls, being the calm in someone else's storm. There was no time for celebration. The next call was already coming in. She pressed the button. 911. What's your emergency? A few days later, a large bouquet of flowers arrived at the 911 call center. The card was addressed to Rachel Morrison. It was from Marcus Hamilton and his family. Inside, he had written about his son, Daniel, who was back to his energetic self. He wrote about his wife, Jennifer, who was recovering well. But the last part of the card was what Rachel carried with her. You saved my family twice, it read. The first time, you sent help, even when I was at my worst. The second time, you were the help. You are not an operator. You are a hero. Thank you. Rachel placed the card on her monitor, right next to a picture of her own family. It was a reminder that behind every screen, every address, every panicked voice, there's a human story. And on the other end of the line, there's another human, ready to answer the call. No matter what, it's easy to get angry when we're scared. It's easy to blame. But it's worth remembering the unseen, unheard people working tirelessly to help us. The dispatchers, the paramedics, the nurses. They face our worst moments with courage and professionalism. They deserve our gratitude, not our anger. So next time you think of them, maybe you think of Rachel and a little boy named Daniel who is breathing today because she answered the phone. Have you ever said something in a moment of pure panic and anger that you later wished you could take back? What if the person you lashed out at turned out to be the one to save something you hold most dear? Today, we're diving into a powerful story about a 911 operator, a terrified father, and a second chance that came in the most unexpected way. It starts with a phone call, the kind no parent ever wants to make. Marcus Hamilton's 5-year-old son, Liam, was choking on a small Lego piece. The silence, the panic, the dawning horror, it was every parent's worst nightmare. He dialed 911, his hands shaking, his voice cracking. On the other end of the line was Rachel Morrison, a calm, steady voice in the storm of his fear. Perfect. The ambulance is 3 minutes away, she said. Keep your son calm. Keep him sitting up. Monitor his breathing. Can you do that? Her instructions were clear, direct, and exactly what Marcus needed. She guided him through the Heimlich maneuver, step by painstaking step. As Marcus felt the tiny piece dislodge and heard his son gasp for air, a wave of relief so powerful it brought him to his knees washed over him. He was sobbing, a mix of gratitude and lingering terror. He had to know the name of the woman who had just walked him back from the edge of a cliff. Hesitantly, she replied, Rachel Morrison. He thanked her, his voice thick with emotion, and she gently corrected him. You saved your son, sir. I just told you how. After the call ended, Rachel took off her headset and walked to the break room. Only then did she let the full weight of the situation sink in. Marcus Hamilton. She knew that name. Just 3 weeks prior, he was the man on the other end of another frantic call. His wife, Jennifer, had collapsed. The ambulance had taken 12 long minutes to arrive, and Marcus, consumed by fear and frustration, had directed all his anger at Rachel. He had called her useless. He had filed a formal complaint against her. He blamed her for the delay, for the system he felt had failed him. Now, she had just saved his son's life. The irony was almost too much to bear. She had just performed her job with excellence for the very man who had claimed she was incapable of it. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the family was reeling. Liam was perfectly fine, just a little scared. The doctors and paramedics all praised Marcus for his quick thinking. The 911 operator walked me through it, he admitted, a lump forming in his throat. He held his son tight, the feeling of his small, breathing body a grounding force. He was overwhelmed with gratitude for a life almost lost and miraculously returned. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table, the events of the day playing over and over in his mind. He couldn't shake the name. Rachel Morrison. He confessed to his wife, Jennifer. She's the same one. From when you collapsed. The one I filed a complaint about. Jennifer's face softened. Marcus. The weight of his words from 3 weeks ago came crashing down on him. I called her useless, he whispered, the shame evident in his voice. I was so angry, and today, ... Today she saved our son's life. She was incredible, and I told her she was useless. Jennifer reached for his hand. You were scared, she offered. People say things they don't mean when they're scared. But Marcus knew he had meant it in that moment. He had been so certain in his anger, so quick to place blame. He had never once stopped to consider her side. He never thought about the pressure she was under, or the factors beyond her control, like ambulance dispatch times. He was just a terrified husband lashing out at the first person he could. Now, he was a grateful father, indebted to the very same person. So, what are you going to do? Jennifer asked, gently. How do you apologize for something like that? He wondered aloud. How do you say, sorry I called you useless. And by the way, thanks for saving my son. Jennifer's advice was simple and profound. Start with exactly that. The truth, it's all you can do. The next day, Marcus took a leap of faith. He found the non-emergency number for the dispatch center and asked to leave a message for Rachel Morrison. He wasn't sure if she'd get it, or if she'd even want to hear from him. But he had to try. He left his number, his heart pounding. To his surprise, she called back that evening. Her voice was professional, cautious. This is Rachel Morrison. You left a message for me. Marcus took a deep breath. Yes. Hi, Rachel. This is Marcus Hamilton. You helped me yesterday. With my son, Liam. There was a pause. I remember, she said quietly. Just, I needed to say thank you again. He's fine. He's completely fine because of you. Another pause. Then Marcus plunged ahead, and I also needed to apologize for the other call. 3 weeks ago, when my wife collapsed, he could hear the change in the silence on her end. It was no longer cautious. It was listening. I was terrified, he continued, his voice thick with emotion. And I was wrong. I said things. I called you useless. And I am so sorry. I never considered what your job was like. I just blamed you. And then, yesterday, you were so calm, so professional, ... You saved my son's life, and I will never, ever be able to thank you enough for that. You are not useless. You're a hero. The silence on the line stretched on, and for a moment, Marcus thought she had hung up. Then, he heard a small, shaky breath. Thank you, Rachel said, her voice softer than before. We don't get a lot of calls like this. People call on the worst day of their lives. We're an easy target for their fear and anger. I get it. But ... hearing this, it means a lot. Thank you, Marcus. In that moment, a bridge was built over a chasm of anger and misunderstanding. It was a bridge built with 2 simple, powerful things. An apology and a thank you. Marcus learned a profound lesson about the unseen people who work tirelessly to help us. These dispatchers, these first responders, they are the calm voices in our personal storms. They absorb our panic, our anger, and our fear, and they guide us through. This story is a beautiful reminder that behind every uniform and every headset is a human being doing a difficult, often thankless job. It's a reminder of the power of grace, the courage it takes to admit when we are wrong, and the incredible impact of a simple, heartfelt thank you. So next time you find yourself in a moment of frustration, maybe take a breath. Remember Rachel. Remember the invisible heroes working behind the scenes. And if you've ever had an experience where someone showed you unexpected kindness or forgiveness, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Let's share some positivity. Thanks so much for watching. If this story touched you, please give it a like and subscribe for more content that makes you think and feel. I need to make this right, he said. His friend looked at him. Then do it. But Marcus, be prepared for the possibility that she won't accept your apology. She doesn't owe you forgiveness. I know, Marcus replied, his voice heavy, but I have to try. The next morning, Marcus's hand trembled slightly as he dialed the number for the 911 dispatch center. I need to speak to a supervisor. Please, he requested. After a brief hold, a woman's voice came on the line. This is Supervisor Linda Chun. How can I help you? Taking a deep breath, Marcus began. My name is Marcus Hamilton. I called 911 3 weeks ago when my wife collapsed, and I called again yesterday when my son was choking. The same operator handled both. Kyle's name was Rachel Morrison. I need to speak with her. Mr. Hamilton, I can take a message. The supervisor started, but Marcus cut her off, a sense of urgency in his tone. No, I need to apologize, in person, if possible. I said some terrible things to her during the first call. And then yesterday, she saved my son's life. I just ... I need to make this right. There was a pause on the other end of the line. You're the one who filed the complaint, Supervisor Chun stated, her voice now flat. Yes, Marcus admitted, shame washing over him. And I was wrong. I want to withdraw the complaint and apologize to Rachel directly. Please. It's really important to me. Mr. Hamilton, Rachel is working right now, and frankly, I'm not sure she wants to meet with you. Her words were a punch to the gut, but he knew he deserved it. I understand. But can you just ask her, please? Another long pause stretched the silence. I'll ask, she finally conceded. Give me your number. Marcus gave her his number and hung up, a knot of uncertainty tightening in his stomach. He wasn't sure if he'd hear back at all. But just 10 minutes later, his phone rang with an unknown number. He answered it tentatively. Mr. Hamilton, this is Rachel Morrison. It was a voice, a semi-calm, professional voice that had been a lifeline in the two worst moments of his entire life. Rachel, Ms. Morrison, I thank you so much for calling me back. My supervisor said you wanted to apologize, she said, her tone unreadable. I do, Marcus rushed to say, the words tumbling out. Need to. What I said to you 3 weeks ago, calling you useless, blaming you for my wife. I was wrong, completely and utterly wrong. You were just doing your job, and I took all my fear and grief out on you. I'm so sorry. Mr. Hamilton, she began, but he couldn't stop. And yesterday, you saved my son's life. You stayed calm when I was falling apart. You told me exactly what to do. You were incredible, and I don't know how to thank you for that, except to sigh. You are not useless. You are the exact opposite of useless. You're a hero, and I was a complete and total asshole to you. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Marcus held his breath. I appreciate the apology, Mr. Hamilton, she said finally. Her response felt small. Is that all? Just I appreciate it, because you deserve so much more than that. You deserve better than having people like me scream at you and blame you for things you and control. Mr. Hamilton, she said, her voice softening just a little. That's part of the job. People call 911 during the absolute worst moments of their lives. They're scared, they're panicked, sometimes they're dying. They lash out, they say hurtful things. I understand that. But understanding it doesn't make it okay, Marcus insisted. Primera, why is it wrong? And I need you to know that I know I was wrong. I know you know, she replied. And honestly, your apology means more than you realize. Most people never call back. They never acknowledge that maybe they were harsh. So, thank you for that. He felt a sliver of relief, but it wasn't enough. Canido more. Can I meet you? Take you to coffee. I just feel like a phone call isn't enough to make up for how I acted. Mr. Hamilton, you don't owe me anything. Your son is safe. That's enough for me. It's not enough for me. He pleaded. Please, let me just try to make this right. He heard her sigh on the other end, a sound of weary resignation. I get off my shift at 6 p.m. tomorrow. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks from the dispatch center. Stellas. I can meet you there at 6:15. A wave of gratitude washed over him. Thank you. Really? Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said, a hint of steel back in her voice. I might not be as gracious in person. Then she hung up. Marcus stared at his phone, a mix of hope and anxiety swirling inside him. He had one chance, and he prayed he could actually make this right. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content just like this. See you next time. The next day, I found myself walking into Stella's coffee at 12 minutes past 6. All day, I'd gone back and forth on whether I should even come. Was meeting Marcus Hamilton in person a good idea? Or was I just picking at a scab that was finally starting to heal? In the end, my curiosity got the better of me. I needed to see him. I wanted to understand why he had been so cruel, so full of venom, and I needed to know if his apology was real or just some guilt-ridden relief because his son turned out to be okay. He was already there, tucked away at a corner table, looking a bundle of nerves. When his cellmate, he shut up so fast he nearly sent his coffee flying. Ms. Morrison. Rachel. Thank you for coming. I took a moment to study him. He looked to be in his mid-30s average height, with a kind face and eyes that seemed heavy, haunted. He was dressed in business casual, like he'd come straight from the office. I noticed his hands were trembling slightly. Mr. Hamilton, I said, taking the seat across from him. Please, call me Marcus. Marcus. I folded my hands on the tabletop, creating a small barrier between us. You said you wanted to apologize in person. So, I'm here. I'm listening. Marcus drew a shaky breath. I don't even know where to begin. Start with why, I suggested. Why were you so angry? Help me understand. I was terrified, he confessed, his voice low. Jennifer May. Wife she. Just collapsed. 1 second she was perfectly fine, and the next she was unconscious on the floor. I had no idea what was happening. I didn't know if she was dying. And then you said the ambulance was 12 minutes away. 12 minutes felt like a lifetime. It felt like she might die right there, simply because help was taking too long. And you thought I could make them come faster, I asked, keeping my voice even. I don't know what I thought, he admitted, shaking his head. I just knew my wife was on the floor, and 12 minutes felt like an eternity, and I needed someone to blame. You were there, so I blamed you, even though you knew I had no control over ambulance response times. It wasn't a question. I know that now. I should have known it then. But in that moment, I was so scared, and so helpless, and so angry, and you were the only target I had. I nodded slowly, letting his words sink in. That's honest. I appreciate that. But Marcus, do you have any idea what it's like on my end of that call? I take dozens of calls, every single shift. Car accidents, heart attacks, domestic violence, suicide attempts. I listen to people screaming, crying, begging me for help. And I help them. I have to stay calm. I guide them through what is often the absolute worst moment of their lives. And then, so often, they blame me when things don't go perfectly. When ambulances get delayed. When people die anyway. When the system, not the person, fails them. I can't imagine how hard that must be. You called me useless? I said, the word hanging in the air between us. Do you have any idea how many times I've heard that? How many times people have told me I'm incompetent, that I don't care, that I'm not doing my job, and every single time, I have to take a breath and remind myself that it's not personal. They're just lashing out. They're scared, but it still hurts. The words still land, and I still have to go back to work the next day and take more calls and hear more abuse. I watched as Marcus's face seemed to crumble. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I am so sorry. I had no idea. I never even thought most people don't. I cut in gently. They just see me as a voice on the phone. Not a person. Not someone who goes home and cries because a complete stranger called her a useless bitch. Not someone who has nightmares about the calls where people died. Not someone who cares deeply about every single person who calls for help. I was wrong, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Completely, utterly wrong, and I don't know how to make it right. I was quiet for a long moment, just watching him. I saw the genuine remorse in his tired eyes. I saw the understanding that had dawned far too late. I saw a man who had been terribly cruel out of fear and now desperately wanted to make amends. Finally, I changed the subject. Tell me about your son, I said softly. Liam, right. Instantly, Marcus's entire expression transformed. A light switched on behind his eyes. He's 5, he said, a smile breaking through. He's so energetic, always curious, and completely obsessed with Legos. He's the sweetest kid, always making up these elaborate stories, always laughing. When I saw him choking, when I saw him turning blue, I thought. His voice broke, and he had to stop. I thought I was going to lose him. And I didn't know what to do. I was completely paralyzed. And then you told me exactly what to do. Step by step. You kept me calm. You saved his life. You saved his life, Marcus. I corrected him. I just provided the instructions. He looked at me, really looked at me, and a single tear traced a path down his cheek. No, he whispered. You did more than that. You were my lifeline. We sat in silence for a bit. The clatter of the coffee shop, a distant hum. The anger I'd carried with me had evaporated, replaced by a strange, quiet understanding. He was just a father who was scared, and I was just a person doing her job. My wife, Jennifer, he started again. She's fine, by the way. It was a vasovagal syncope. Scary, but not dangerous. She felt terrible about how I spoke to you. I'm glad she's okay, I said, and I meant it. Can I ask you something? He said. Why do you do it? Your job. Why do you put yourself through that every day? I thought about it. I thought about the chaos, the fear, the verbal punches, but I also thought about the moments of profound connection. The babies I'd helped deliver over the phone, the choking victims who started breathing again, the panicked parents I'd managed to keep calm, because sometimes, I said, meeting his gaze, I get to be the calm in someone's storm. Sometimes I get to be the voice that helps a father save his son's life. Those moments, they make all the others worth it. He nodded, a slow, deep understanding passing between us. Rachel, he said, his voice full of a sincerity that resonated deep in my bones. Thank you. For everything. For saving Liam. And for giving me a chance to say I'm sorry. And sometimes, all they need is a little bit of grace. He sat across from me in the bustling coffee shop. His eyes red. You did more than that, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You knew I was panicking. You knew I was on the edge of completely losing it. And you brought me back. You made me focus. You gave me a task and the confidence that I could do it. That's not just instructions. That's skill. That's expertise. That's... He trailed off, wiping at his eyes. That's everything. My own eyes started to sting. I took a slow sip of my latte, trying to keep my professional composure. How is he? I asked, my voice softer than I intended. No complications? A genuine smile broke through his pained expression. He's perfect. He's running around, driving his sister crazy. I already forgot it even happened. Kids are resilient, like that. Good, I said, a wave of relief washing over me. I'm so glad. We sat in a comfortable silence for a moment. The normal sounds of the cafe, the hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of conversations filling the space between us. It was a stark contrast to the last time we'd spoken, when the only sounds were his panicked breaths and my steady instructions over the phone. Then, he broke the silence. I withdrew my complaint, Marcus said, looking me straight in the eye. And I want to do more. I want to advocate for better funding for 911 dispatch. I want to make sure people understand how hard your job is. I want to help however I can. I almost choked on my coffee. That's not necessary. It is to me, he insisted, leaning forward. I can't undo what I said. I can't take back the complaint or the horrible review I left, but I can try to make a difference. I can try to make your job easier. I studied him for a long moment. This was the same man who had screamed at me, who had called me incompetent, who had threatened my job. The memories still stung. Why? I asked, genuinely curious. Why do you care so much now? He looked down at his hands, then back up at me, his gaze unflinching. Because I was wrong. Because you saved my son. Because you deserve better than to be treated the way I treated you. Because maybe if I do something good, it balances out the terrible thing I did. I shook my head slowly. That's not how it works. Marcus, you can't just do a few good deeds and erase cruelty. I know, he admitted, his shoulders slumping slightly. I know. But I have to try. I have to be better than I was. And if that helps you or other dispatchers, eventually, then maybe it's worth doing. I looked at him, this man who had caused me so much stress, now trying so desperately to make amends. This man who had lashed out in fear and was now, in the quiet light of day, facing his own mistakes head-on. There was a sincerity in his eyes I couldn't deny. Okay, I said finally, the word hanging in the air. I accept your apology, and if you genuinely want to help, there are ways you can. His face lit up with a sort of desperate hope. He leaned forward, all his attention focused on me. Tell me. Whatever it is, I'll do it. I took a deep breath. This was my chance, not just for me, but for all of us. Dispatchers are underfunded, understaffed, and underappreciated. I began, the words I'd thought 1,000 times finally being spoken to someone who might actually listen. Most people don't realize we're not sworn officers. We don't get the same respect or resources as police or firefighters, even though we're the first responders who guide everyone else to the scene. We're the first responders. We need better pay, better training, and much better mental health support. If you want to advocate for us, start there. He was already pulling out his phone, opening a notes app. I will, he said, his voice firm with newfound purpose. I absolutely will. What else? Tell your story, I continued, and not just the part where I saved your son. Tell the whole story. Tell people how you were cruel to me, how you learned you were wrong, how you realized that 911 dispatchers are human beings doing an incredibly difficult and stressful job. People need to hear that. People need to understand that the calm voice on the other end of the phone is a person who deserves basic respect, even when you're having the worst day of your life. He nodded, typing furiously. I'll tell everyone. I'll write about it. I'll speak about it at town halls. Whatever helps. A small, genuine smile touched my lips. You're really serious about this, aren't you? Completely serious, he confirmed, looking up from his phone. You changed my life, Rachel. Twice. Once by doing your job with incredible skill when my wife was in labor, and a second time by saving my son's life. Both times, you were professional and calm, and exactly what my family needed. You deserved my gratitude the first time. Instead, you got my abuse. I'm trying to fix that. Well, I said, it's a start. But Marcus, this can't just be about your guilt. If you're going to advocate for us, you have to do it because it's the right thing to do, not just because you feel bad about what happened. He paused, considering my words. I do feel bad, he confessed. But you're right. It has to be bigger than that. It has to be about making real, lasting change for the people who do your job. We talked for another hour. I told him about the realities of the dispatch center, the chronic staffing shortages that lead to forced overtime and burnout, the impossible call volumes, one emergency bleeding into the next with no time to process. I told him about the trauma we absorb daily, the sounds and stories that haunt us long after our shifts end. He listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, and took notes on everything. When we finally parted ways, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Hope. Maybe this man, who had been the source of so much pain, could actually make a real difference. Maybe his guilt could be transformed into something powerful and useful. As I drove home, I thought about the complexity of people, how someone could be so terrible in one moment and so genuinely remorseful in the next, how fear can make good people do very bad things, but also how growth is always possible, even after causing harm. Marcus Hamilton had been profoundly wrong. He had let his fear turn into cruelty, and he had aimed it all at me. But now, he was trying to be right. He was trying to be better. And as I pulled into my driveway, I thought, maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Over the next 3 months, Marcus Hamilton became a name synonymous with one thing: advocating for 911 dispatchers. It was an unlikely turn for a man who, just weeks earlier, had been on the verge of filing a formal complaint against one. But life has a funny way of teaching you lessons, and Marcus had learned his in the most harrowing way possible. His journey started not with a grand gesture, but with a simple op-ed in the local paper. The headline was stark and brutally honest. "I called a 911 operator useless, then she saved my son his life." The piece was raw. A confessional. He detailed his initial anger, the misplaced frustration, the dismissive cruelty in his voice during that first call. He didn't spare himself, laying his own failings bare for the world to see. Then, he described the second call, the one that changed everything. He wrote about the calm, steady voice of Rachel Morrison guiding him through the terrifying minutes as his son struggled to breathe, a voice that was the lifeline pulling his family back from the brink of tragedy. The article didn't just get published, it exploded. It was like he had struck a nerve that resonated with thousands. The local news station was the first to call, then a regional network. Soon, his story was being discussed on national morning shows, on radio programs during the morning commute, and on popular podcasts. In every interview, Marcus told the story, the full, unvarnished truth. He talked about the complaint he almost filed, the rage that had consumed him, and the profound, life-altering realization that he had been catastrophically, unforgivably wrong. He had a consistent message, a mantra he repeated until it became his signature. 911 dispatchers, he would say, his voice thick with conviction, are the invisible heroes of our emergency services. They are the first responders. They're the calm voices that guide us through the absolute worst moments of our lives. And what do? We abuse at them. We blame them for systemic failures that are completely beyond their control. We treat them like they're just an extension of the phone, not the highly trained, dedicated professionals who are saving lives every single day. Words alone, he realized, were not enough. So he started a nonprofit. He called it the First Voice Foundation, dedicated to supporting 911 dispatchers. The foundation's mission was clear: to fight for better pay, to advocate for advanced and continuous training, and, perhaps most importantly, to provide accessible and robust mental health resources for a profession that carried an unimaginable emotional burden. He became a fixture at city council meetings, lobbying relentlessly for increased funding for the dispatch center. He wasn't just asking for money. He was presenting a case, using data and personal stories to illustrate the critical need. He organized public appreciation events, ceremonies where dispatchers, so often faceless and nameless, were honored in front of their communities, their stories told, their service celebrated. Through it all, an unexpected friendship blossomed. Marcus and Rachel Morrison, the dispatcher who had saved his son's life and unknowingly set him on this new path, began meeting for coffee once a month, at their usual spot, a quiet cafe named Stellus. Rachel opened up about the realities of her job. She spoke of the calls that haunted her long after her shift ended, the impossible life-or-death decisions made in seconds, the constant emotional toll of being immersed in other people's trauma. Marcus listened. He didn't just hear the words, he absorbed them. He learned about the burnout, the vicarious trauma, the feeling of being forgotten in the chain of emergency response, and he used this new, deeper understanding to shape his advocacy, to make his arguments more powerful, more authentic. "You're really good at this," Rachel said one afternoon, stirring her latte. "The advocacy. You're making a real difference, Marcus." He offered a small, self-deprecating smile. "It's the least I can do, though honestly, my wife Jennifer thinks I've become obsessed." She might have a point. Rachel looked at him, her gaze direct. "Let me ask you something. Are you doing all of this because you feel guilty, or because you actually care?" Marcus paused, considering the question seriously. "Both, I think," he admitted. "It definitely started with guilt. A massive, crushing wave of it, but it's grown into something bigger than that. Now that I've met so many dispatchers, heard so many of their stories, the work you do is it's incredible. It's thankless and emotionally devastating. Someone needs to be in your corner, fighting for you. And for whatever reason, I find myself in a position to be that person." "But what about your actual job?" Rachel asked. "Don't you work in finance or something?" "Corporate accounting," he confirmed, with a slight grimace. "It's boring. I'm good at it, and it pays the bills. But this," he gestured around, as if encompassing his new mission, "this feels like it matters more. Jennifer and I have actually been talking about it, about me possibly transitioning to nonprofit work full-time, making the First Voice Foundation my actual career, not just a side project I'm passionate about." "That's a big change," Rachel said, her eyebrows raised in surprise. "So I was almost losing my wife and my son within 3 weeks of each other," he replied, his voice quiet but firm. "It puts things in perspective. It makes you realize that spending your life staring at spreadsheets is quite as meaningful as trying to help the people who spend their lives helping everyone else." A genuine smile spread across Rachel's face. "You've come a long way from the guy who called me useless." Marcus physically cringed, the memories still sharp and painful. "God, don't remind me. I still feel sick thinking about it." "Good," she said, her tone softening. "You should. But Marcus, you've made amends. You've done the work, more than anyone could have expected. You can stop punishing yourself now." He looked out the window, watching the people walk by, each in their own world, oblivious to the invisible safety net that people like Rachel provided. "Have I? Really? Because sometimes I think about all the other people out there, the ones who have been cruel to you and your colleagues, the ones who haven't learned the lesson I learned. I think about all the abuse that continues, every single day, on every single shift. And I think to myself, one person making amends isn't enough." "It's not," Rachel agreed, her voice a gentle echo of his own thoughts. "But it's something, and sometimes something is the best we can do." Marcus nodded, knowing she was right. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to do. The spreadsheets could wait. The real work had just begun. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, please consider learning more about the dispatchers in your own community. A simple thank you can make a world of difference. Suddenly, Rachel's phone buzzed, cutting through our conversation. She glanced at the screen, and a frown immediately creased her forehead. "I need to take this. Just 1 second." She excused herself and stepped outside. I watched her through the window, her body language shifting, her expression growing more and more serious as she spoke. When she came back in, she looked pale. "Almost stuck in everything okay?" I asked, a sense of unease creeping in. She sank back into a chair. "That was my supervisor," she said, her voice strained. "There's an investigation. One of our dispatchers, Sarah, she's been there for 10 years. She's being sued." "Sued? For what?" "A woman died of a heart attack. The family is claiming Sarah didn't provide adequate instructions, that she didn't dispatch help fast enough. They're saying she's responsible for their mother's death." I leaned forward. "Is there any truth to it? Did she make a mistake?" Rachel shook her head emphatically. "No, absolutely not. I've already reviewed the call myself. Sarah did everything right, by the book, perfectly. The woman was having a massive coronary. The hard truth is, nothing was going to save her. But the family, ... They need someone to blame, and Sarah is the easy target. So what happens now? I asked, trying to grasp the implications. An internal investigation, Rachel began, ticking off the grim list. Possible disciplinary action, even if she's eventually cleared. A lawsuit that will drag on hefty legal fees. And, of course, the emotional trauma of being blamed for something you didn't do. For a death you couldn't prevent. Cyril's already falling apart. She's been taking anti-anxiety meds just to get through her shifts. This might just destroy her. A familiar anger began to simmer inside me. It wasn't directed at Rachel or even Sarah, but at the sheer injustice of the situation. That's not fair, I said, the words feeling utterly inadequate. No, Rachel agreed, a bitter edge to her voice. But it's the reality of our job. Dispatchers get blamed when things go wrong. Even when we do everything perfectly. Even when the outcome was inevitable from the start. We're convenient scapegoats for grief and anger. Can I help? The question was out before I even fully formed the thought. Can Fur's voice provide legal support? Or ... Something. I don't know. Maybe. I need to check with Sarah first. See what she needs. What she's comfortable with. But Marcus, this is it. This is why so many dispatchers burn out. It's the constant, crushing pressure. The verbal abuse from callers. And then, on top of all that, getting blamed when people die anyway. It's just too much for anyone to bear. Then we need to change it, I declared, my resolve hardening. We need legal protections for dispatchers. We need, Rachel cut me off, her expression a mix of exhaustion and cynicism. We need a lot of things, but wanting them and actually getting them are two very different worlds. But I wasn't listening to the doubt anymore. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling my lawyer. Right now, we're going to figure out how First Voice can fully support Sarah. And we're going to use her case to push for real legal reform. I know a state senator. He owes me a favor. We are going to make this a priority. Rachel stared at me, her eyes wide with something that looked like amazement. You're serious? Completely serious, I replied, my voice steady. Sarah doesn't deserve this. You don't deserve to stand by and watch your colleague get destroyed for doing her job well. And frankly, I'm in a position to help. So I'm going to help. A small, sad smile touched her lips. You know, 3 months ago, you would have been on the family's side. You would have been the first to blame Sarah for the delay. For the death, for everything. Her words hit me, but they didn't sting. They were just the truth. 3 months ago, I was ignorant, I admitted. Now I'm not, and I'm going to use that knowledge to actually make a difference. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her touch was warm, grounding. Thank you, she said softly. Really, thank you for becoming this person instead of staying who you were. I looked down at her hands, then back at her. I'm still trying to figure out who this person is, I confessed, but I know he's better than the man I used to be. Sarah Chun's case became the catalyst for everything that followed. The First Voice Foundation hired a top-tier law firm to defend her, completely pro bono. We didn't stop there. I organized a full-scale public relations campaign to shine a light on the hidden realities of 911, dispatch work, the impossible situations they face, the life-or-death decisions made in mere seconds, and the fundamental limitations of what a dispatcher can do from the other end of a phone line. The media attention grew, and so did public understanding. Eventually, the lawsuit against Sarah was dismissed. In a landmark ruling, the judge stated that Sarah had acted appropriately and professionally at all times. He affirmed that the woman's death was the tragic result of a massive, unsurvivable medical event, and that blaming the dispatcher was entirely without merit. It was a legal victory, but it felt hollow. The damage was already done. Sarah left the profession. The stress of the investigation, the public scrutiny, the weight of the accusation, it broke something inside her that couldn't be repaired. She was one of the best, Rachel told me shortly after Sarah's resignation, her voice heavy with loss. 10 years of experience. hundreds of lives saved, and one family's grief, misdirected and weaponized, ended her career. That's criminal, I said, the injustice of it all hitting me like a physical blow. That's reality, she replied. This job chews people up and spits them out. Sarah is just one more casualty. Her words didn't discourage me. They fueled me. I redoubled my efforts. The First Voice Foundation expanded. We secured more funding, hired more staff, and amplified our advocacy work. We drafted and pushed for new legislation, Sarah's Law, designed to protect dispatchers from frivolous and malicious lawsuits. We lobbied for increased mental health support to be mandated in every emergency communications center. Cities started to increase dispatcher pay. New training programs were developed, and old ones were improved. Mental health resources were finally being expanded, and public awareness was slowly, but surely, growing. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough to fix everything overnight, but it was progress. Real, tangible progress. I made a huge decision around that time. I left my corporate accounting job to run First Voice full-time. It was a massive leap of faith. But my wife, Jennifer, was my biggest supporter. She had seen the fire this work lit in me, how much more fulfilled I was compared to my old life staring at spreadsheets. One night, she turned to me and said, "You found your purpose. You know, most people spend their entire lives searching for that. You're so lucky you found it." I shook my head. "I only found it because I almost lost our son. That's not luck, that's tragedy forcing you to grow." "Maybe," she replied gently. "But you chose to grow. So many people would have just stayed angry. Stayed. You chose to change. And that's worth something." She was right. The anger hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into fuel. On the 1-year anniversary of Liam's choking incident, I knew I had to do something big. We organized the first ever National 911 Dispatchee Appreciation Day. It was a massive undertaking. We partnered with other first responder organizations, got corporate sponsors on board, and even managed to convince the president to issue an official proclamation. The centerpiece of the event was our keynote speaker, Rachel, the dispatcher who had been on the line with me during the worst moment of my life. She stood at a podium in a grand hotel ballroom, packed with dispatchers, advocates, and media. You could feel the nervous energy in the room, but she was a pillar of strength. She began to tell her story. She talked about the calls that haunted her sleep, the ones that never left her. She spoke about the constant abuse she and her colleagues endured from callers, and sometimes even from the systems they worked for. She mentioned Sarah Chun and the countless other dispatchers who had been broken by a system that demanded everything from them and gave so little in return. "We are the first responders," she said, her voice clear and strong, ringing through the silent room. "We are the voices of calm in the middle of absolute chaos. We are the people who stay on the line when buildings are burning, when bullets are flying, when people are dying. We talk you through CPR. We help you deliver babies in your living room. We do our best to keep you calm while help is on the way. We do all of this, day in and day out, for low pay, very little recognition, and constant criticism. But we do it anyway. Because someone has to. Because people need us. Because in the absolute worst moments of your life, we are there. Always. Without fail." The room was captivated. Then she looked directly at me. "Today, I want to thank the advocates who are finally fighting for us, especially Marcus Hamilton, who went from being my harshest critic to my strongest ally. His journey from anger to advocacy proves that growth is possible, that change is possible, that we can all choose to be better than we were." The applause was thunderous. It wasn't just clapping. It was an outpouring of years of frustration, validation, and hope. People were on their feet. Some were crying. It was one of the most powerful moments I've ever witnessed. Later, I found Rachel in the hallway. She was mobbed. Dispatches from all over the country were thanking her, hugging her, sharing their own stories through tears. She looked completely exhausted, but also exhilarated. When she finally broke away from the crowd, I walked up to her. "That was incredible, Rachel. Just incredible." She let out a shaky breath. I was terrified. "Public speaking is not my thing. You were perfect," I told her, and I meant it. "Everything you said, it's exactly what people need to hear. You gave a voice to thousands of people today. I hope it helps," she said, her shoulders slumping a little. "Because honestly, Marcus, I'm so tired. I've been doing this job for 9 years. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing it." Her words hit me hard. "Are you thinking about leaving?" She nodded. "Every single day. The calls, the constant stress, the secondary trauma just accumulates. It builds up inside you. And events like this, as amazing as they are, they also remind me of how much we deal with, how much weight we carry, and how little we're compensated for it. I could go work almost anywhere else, make more money with a fraction of the stress. Most dispatchers don't even last 10 years. I'm getting close to that limit." "What would you do instead?" I asked, my mind already racing. "I don't know. Maybe teach. I think I'd be good at training new dispatchers, helping them avoid the kind of burnout I'm feeling right now. Or maybe work for a place like First Voice. Use my experience to help shape policy instead of just taking the cause." My eyes lit up. It was like a puzzle piece clicking perfectly into place. "Actually, Rachel, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. We're growing, and First Voice needs a director of dispatcher relations. We need someone who understands this job from the inside out. Someone the dispatcher community trusts. Someone who can guide our advocacy based on real, lived experience. I honestly can't think of anyone better for the job than you." She looked stunned. "Marcus, I can't." "Why not?" I interrupted gently. "You just said you're burning out. This would be a way to keep helping dispatchers, to keep fighting the good fight, but without the trauma of being on the line every day. You'd be making real, systemic change, using your 9 years of experience to improve the entire profession for everyone who comes after you." She was quiet for a long moment, just looking at me, the wheels clearly turning in her head. Finally, she asked a practical question. "What would it pay?" "More than you're making now," I said quickly. "Better benefits, normal, predictable hours. No more night shifts. No more life or death calls at 3 in the morning. Just advocacy training and policy work." She took another deep breath. "When do you need an answer?" "Take your time," I assured her. "Think about it. Talk to Jennifer if you want. She's on the board now. She can answer any questions you have about the organization. But Rachel, you would be perfect for this. And honestly, we need you. I need you. Your expertise, your voice, your credibility. You could help us do so much more." She looked at me, and for the first time since her speech, a small, genuine smile touched her lips. "I'll think about it. I'll seriously think about it." As I watched her walk away, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Bringing her on board wouldn't just be a good hire. It would be a game changer. It would be the next step in turning our pain into purpose and ensuring that no other family and no other dispatcher would have to go through what we did. The fight was far from over, but with people like Rachel by our side, I knew we could win. 2 weeks later, Rachel made her decision. She accepted the position. Her final day as a 911 dispatcher was a whirlwind of emotions. Her colleagues, her family in the trenches, threw her a farewell party. They swapped stories, the funny ones, the gut-wrenching ones. There were tears, of course, but also laughter and genuine celebration for her 9 years of unwavering service. 9 years of being the calm voice in the storm, of saving countless lives. Her supervisor pulled her aside, his eyes glistening. "You're one of the good ones, Rachel," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This job is losing a truly great but I'm so glad you're getting out before it breaks you. Like it broke Sarah and so many others we've lost along the way." Her very last call came in at 5:47 p.m. on a Friday. It was a car accident. Thankfully, the injuries were minor. A straightforward dispatch. No high-stakes drama. No heart-stopping crises. Just a routine call. Nothing particularly memorable. "Help is on the way," she told the caller, her voice steady and reassuring as always. "Please stay with your vehicle. Paramedics will be there in about 5 minutes." "Thank you," the caller said, relief washing over their words. "Thank you so much. You're welcome. Take care." Rachel disconnected the line. She logged a call, a simple series of keystrokes that marked the end of an era. Then, she slowly removed her headset, the familiar weight now feeling strangely foreign. 9 years. Thousands upon thousands of calls, countless lives touched, altered, saved. And just like that, it was over. She stood up, gathered her few personal belongings from her desk, and with a final look around the humming dispatch center, she walked out the door for the last time. Marcus was waiting for her in the parking lot, leaning against his car as the sun began to dip below the horizon. "How do you feel?" he asked gently. Rachel let out a long breath. Relieved, sad, grateful, terrified. All of it, all at once. "That sounds about right," he smiled. "It's normal. You're starting a brand new chapter." She looked at him, a wave of realization washing over her. "And it's all thanks to you. If you hadn't called me useless that night, if I hadn't been the one to help save Liam ... if you hadn't started First Voice, none of this would be happening." Marcus chuckled softly. "It's funny how life works out, isn't it? The absolute worst moment of my life became the catalyst for the best possible outcome." "Do you ever think about it?" Rachel asked, her voice quiet. "How close we came to not having any of this. I mean, what if I'd been on my break when you called about Liam? What if a different dispatcher had taken the call? What if you hadn't recognized my voice from before? This whole trajectory, our whole lives, would be completely different." "I think about it all the time," Marcus admitted, his gaze distant. "And I'm just so grateful for all of Italiano, even for that terrible part where I was cruel to you. Because it led to this. It led to us working together. It led to me finding my purpose, and to you escaping the burnout that was slowly eating you away. It's all connected." They stood there in the quiet of the parking lot, watching the sky bleed into shades of orange and purple, both lost in thought about the strange, improbable journey that had brought them to this exact spot. "Ready for Monday?" Marcus finally asked, breaking the silence. "First day? As Director of Dispatcher Relations?" Rachel laughed, a sound of both excitement and nerves. "Ready as I'll ever be. Though honestly, I've absolutely no idea what I'm doing." "Join the club," Marcus said with a grin. "Neither did I when I started First Voice. We'll figure it out as we go. Together. Partners?" she asked, extending her hand. "Partners," he confirmed, shaking it firmly. "A deal cieled. A new chapter begun, and the start of a most unlikely and powerful friendship." 3 years flew by. In that time, First Voice Foundation grew from a small, passionate project into a national force for change. They had helped pass landmark legislation in 12 states, protecting dispatchers from frivolous and draining lawsuits. They established mental health programs that were now serving over 2,000 dispatchers across the country, giving them the support they so desperately needed. They lobbied, and lobbied successfully, for increased federal funding for 911 systems, pushing for much-needed upgrades and resources. They trained administrators, educated the public about the realities of the job, and fundamentally changed the entire conversation surrounding emergency dispatch. Rachel had blossomed into the public face of the organization. She was a natural. She spoke at conferences, her voice resonating with authenticity and passion. She testified before legislative committees, her first-hand experience silencing rooms and compelling politicians to listen. She appeared on national media, calmly and articulately explaining the immense pressures of the job. Her insider perspective gave First Voice a level of credibility that other advocacy organizations could only dream of. Marcus, meanwhile, was the engine that kept the entire operation running. He ran the day-to-day operations. He fundraised tirelessly, managed a growing staff, and coordinated their nationwide campaigns. He had become a bona fide expert on emergency response systems, constantly studying best practices, analyzing data, and identifying critical areas for improvement. Together, They were a perfect team. They had built something truly meaningful. Something that was making a real, tangible difference in people's lives. Then, one afternoon in late spring, Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed a Washington, D.C. area code. He answered, his curiosity piqued. "Mr. Hamilton, this is Senator Elizabeth Morrison's office," a professional voice said on the other end. "The senator has been following the work of your foundation and would like to speak with you about potential federal legislation regarding 911 dispatch reform. Would you be available for a meeting next week?" Marcus's heart started hammering against his ribs. Federal legislation. National reform. This was it. This was the mountaintop they had been climbing toward since day one. "Absolutely," he managed to say, keeping his voice steady. "When and where?" He jotted down the details, hung up the phone, and immediately dialed Rachel's number. She picked up on the second ring. "You're not going to believe this," he said, unable to contain his excitement. "We got a meeting with Senator Morrison. She wants to discuss federal legislation." A loud, joyous scream erupted from the other end of the line. "Are you serious, Marcus? Are you actually serious?" The dream was becoming a reality. The voice that had started as a single, desperate call for help was about to echo in the halls of Congress. And for dispatchers everywhere, things were finally, truly about to change. "Next Tuesday in D.C. Can you come? Completely serious. Try and stop me. This is huge, Marcus. Federal legislation could change everything." I know. God, I can't believe we're here. You should. You built this. You took your guilt and your anger and turned it into something that's helped thousands of people. You should be proud, Weevil. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Your expertise, your credibility, your passion, that's what made First Voice legitimate. Partners. Yes, that meeting with Senator Morrison in D.C. went better than we ever could have hoped. The data we presented convinced her, the personal stories we shared moved her, and the results we've achieved truly impressed her. She committed right there and then. She promised to introduce comprehensive 911 reform legislation in the next session. This wasn't just a small change. It was everything we had fought for. Increased funding, legal protections for dispatchers, mandatory mental health support, and standardized, high-level training requirements across the board. The senator told us something that really stuck with me. She said, "Your organization has done the groundwork most advocacy groups never achieve. You've proven that reform works. You've built coalitions. You've documented results. I can sell this legislation because you've already done the hard part." Flying home, Marcus and I were sitting in first-class seats, a luxury that First Voice could finally afford. It was a tangible sign of how far we'd come. I looked over at him and just said, "We did it. We actually might change federal law." Marcus Everett, a pragmatist, replied, "That's a big if." But I saw it differently. Even if it doesn't pass immediately, we've gotten this far. Think about it. 3 years ago, I was a burned-out dispatcher, and you were a man carrying so much guilt, just trying to make amends. Now, we're lobbying senators and helping to shape national policy. That's incredible. Marcus looked at me then, his expression serious. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." "I'm grateful," he started, "for all of Italiano, even the terrible parts. Because if I hadn't been so cruel to you that day, if I hadn't almost lost Liam, if I hadn't been forced to confront my own ignorance, I'd still be stuck in corporate accounting, absolutely miserable, feeling like my life had no purpose. This work, this organization, you gave me meaning. So thank you." I tried to brush it off. "Marcus, you don't need to keep thanking me." "Yes, I do," he insisted. "Because you could have stayed angry. You had every right to. You could have refused my apology. You could have told me to get lost when I first brought up the idea for First Voice. But you didn't. Instead, you gave me a second chance. You taught me so much. You partnered with me. You trusted me even though I had given you every single reason not to. That's a kind of grace that I know I didn't deserve." I could feel tears welling up in my eyes. His words hit me right in the heart. And I realized something profound in that moment. You know what you taught me, Marcus. You taught me that people can change, that cruelty doesn't have to be a permanent state, that someone who says terrible things out of fear can become someone who does beautiful things with purpose. You restored my faith in humans, Marcus, and that's worth more than any legislation. Marcus chuckled, wiping his own eyes. Now we're both crying on an airplane. This is embarrassing. I laughed through my tears. Speak for yourself. I'm a dignified professional showing appropriate emotion. Sure you are, he said, and the tension broke. We were just two people, two partners, who had been through hell and back together. We spent the rest of that flight not celebrating, but planning. Federal legislation was just the beginning, not the end. There was so much more to do. We started talking about international partnerships, new research initiatives, technology improvements, and the long, hard road of changing the culture around emergency services. We knew the work would never truly be finished, but we'd keep doing it anyway, because that's what you do when you find your purpose. When you find a true partnership, when you find a way to turn your absolute worst moment into your greatest contribution. About 6 months later, on a beautiful Saturday morning, Marcus brought his family to the First Voice Foundation's headquarters. His kids, Emma and Liam, were growing up so fast. Emma was 16 now, and Liam was 11. They had grown up hearing the stories about us, about the day Dad saved Liam and Miss Rachel, who helped. "This is where you work now, Dad?" Emma asked, her eyes wide as she looked around the bustling office. "This is where I work," Marcus said, with a quiet pride in his voice. "And Miss Rachel. We help 911 dispatchers, the people who answered the phone when someone calls for emergency help." Liam, who was always so thoughtful, chimed in, like when Mom collapsed. "Exactly like that," Marcus confirmed. "The person I talked to when your mom collapsed was Miss Rachel, and she was the one who helped me save you when you were choking." Liam looked down for a second. "I remember being scared, but I don't really remember the choking part." "That's okay," Marcus reassured him, ruffling his hair. "The important part is, you're here now. You're safe, and Miss Rachel helped make that happen." Just then, I emerged from my office, drawn by the sound of their voices. I thought I heard my favorite people. "Hi, guys." Instantly, Emma and Liam ran over and gave me a big hug. Over the years, I had become a regular fixture in their lives, present for family dinners, birthday parties, and holidays. I wasn't just Miss Rachel anymore. I was Aunt Rachel, a friend who had truly become family. Marcus's wife, Jennifer, smiled at me. "Are you taking the day off?" I shook my head, laughing. "No, just taking a quick break. We're getting everything ready for the Senate hearing next month. The federal legislation is actually moving forward faster than we ever expected." "That's amazing," Jennifer sighed, her voice filled with genuine warmth. "Congratulations. Couldn't have done it without your husband," I replied, glancing at Marcus. "He's relentless." Marcus just smiled. "I learned from the best. Rachel's the relentless one. I just follow her lead." We spent the rest of that morning together. Marcus gave his kids a tour of the office, explaining what each team did, introducing them to the staff. He was so passionate, so engaged. I knew he wanted them to see more than just an office building. He wanted them to understand what purpose looked like, what it felt like. He wanted them to see, firsthand, what it meant to take your worst moment, the darkest chapter of your life, and transform it into something meaningful, something that helps others. Looking at him with his family, seeing the love and the pride in their eyes, I saw the full circle. We started this journey from a place of fear, anger, and guilt. We were two broken people who found a common cause. Along the way, we didn't just build an organization. We rebuilt ourselves. We found forgiveness, not just for each other, but for ourselves. And we discovered that the most powerful thing you can do with your pain is to use it to heal others. The work is far from over. There will be more challenges, more late nights, more battles to fight. But now, we face them together, as partners, as family. We face them with purpose, and we know, deep in our hearts, that even one life saved, one dispatcher supported, one family kept whole, makes it all worthwhile. We took our darkest day and used it to bring light to others. and that is a legacy worth fighting for. Dad, why do you work here? You had a different job before. As we were leaving, my son Liam looked up at me with those big, curious eyes. I knelt down to his level, right there in the hallway of the foundation, because I started trying to find the right words. Because when you were choking, I learned something really important. I learned that the people who help us like Miss Rachel, they're heroes, but nobody really treats them like heroes. So, I wanted to change that. I wanted to help the people who help everyone else. Liam thought about that for a second. That's a good job, he said, and my heart just swelled. It's the best job, I told him. Much better than my old one, where I just looked at numbers all day. This job, ... this job matters. This job helps people. He looked around the office, then back at me. When you grow up, can I work here? I glanced over at my wife, Jennifer, then at Rachel, our director and my friend, before looking back at my son. You can work wherever you want, buddy. But if you choose to work here, we'd be incredibly lucky to have you. We said our goodbyes to Rachel and headed home. In the car, the late afternoon sun streamed through the windshield. Jennifer reached over and squeezed my hand. You're a good man, Marcus, she said quietly. I smiled, a little sadly. I'm trying to be. I wasn't always, but you are now, she insisted. That's what matters. You could have stayed angry after I collapsed. You could have stayed buried in guilt after Liam's incident. But you didn't. Instead, you changed. You grew. You became someone who actually makes the world a better place. I'm so proud of you. And for the first time, I could say it and mean it. I'm proud of me too. Finally, for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm doing something that really, truly matters. Jennifer nodded, her eyes soft. You are. And Liam sees that. Emma sees it too. They're learning from you. They're learning what it means to turn mistakes into growth. To take responsibility. To use your resources to help people. That's the best gift you could ever give them. Driving home, I felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over me. Gratitude for my family. For T.S. work, for the unlikely friendship I'd found with Rachel, and for the purpose that had risen from the wreckage of my own worst behavior. Life is a strange, winding road. The moment I had been my absolute cruelest was the very moment that sparked my greatest growth. The person I had hurt the most had become my closest colleague and friend. The guilt that nearly consumed me had transformed into action that was helping thousands. Looking back, I wouldn't change a single thing. Not even the terrible parts, because those terrible parts, they forged me into the man I am today. And the man I am now is so much better than the man I used to be. 5 years. 5 years after that one incident changed everything. I found myself sitting in the front row at the U.S. Capitol building. Rachel stood at the podium, a picture of strength and grace. The 911 Dispatcher Recognition and Support Act had passed both chambers of Congress. Today was the signing ceremony. The President of the United States was about to make it law, and Rachel Morrison, former 911 now the Director of Dispatcher Relations for the First Voice Foundation, was about to speak before the signing. I sat with Jennifer and our kids, Emma and Liam. My parents were there. Rachel's family was there. Dispatchers from all across the country filled the seats. Advocates who had fought tooth and nail for this very moment were all around us. The air was electric with anticipation and triumph. Rachel looked out at the crowd, her gaze sweeping over the faces of everyone who had supported this work, and you could just feel the overwhelming gratitude radiating from her. Mr. President, members of Congress, fellow advocates, and dispatches across this great nation, she began, her voice clear and steady. Today marks a historic moment. The 911 Dispatcher Recognition and Support Act provides unprecedented protections and resources for the men and women who are America's first responders. The room was silent, hanging on her every word. This legislation, she continued, provides crucial legal protections from frivolous lawsuits. It mandates mental health support. It increases funding for training and modern equipment. It recognizes officially and at the federal level that 911 dispatchers are critical, indispensable members of the emergency response system. She paused, letting the weight of that sink in. But this law is more than just policy. It's recognition, it's acknowledgement. It's America finally saying to its 911 dispatchers, "We see you. We value you. We appreciate the impossible work you do every single day." Then, her voice took on a more personal tone. "I was a dispatcher for 9 years. I took thousands of calls. I talked people through heart attacks, car accidents, assaults, fires. I helped deliver babies over the phone. I helped save lives, and I was also yelled at, blamed, and called useless when things went wrong, things that were completely out of my control." She took a breath, and her eyes found mine in the front row. "That last part, being called useless, that came from a man who is in this room today, Marcus Hamilton." A soft murmur went through the crowd. 5 years ago, he called me useless after I dispatched an ambulance to help his wife. He filed a formal complaint. He blamed me for system failures I couldn't possibly control. I kept my eyes on hers, my heart pounding. This was our story. 3 weeks later, Rochelle went on. I answered another call from Marcus. This time, his 5-year-old son was choking, and I walked him through the Heimlich maneuver that saved his son's life. She looked back at the wider audience. Marcus could have stayed angry. He could have remained ignorant about the harsh realities of being a 911 but he didn't. Instead, he apologized. He learned. He grew. And then he founded the First Voice Foundation and has spent the last 5 years fighting tirelessly for dispatches across this nation. Tears welled in my eyes. Jennifer squeezed my hand again, and this time it was a squeeze of shared victory. Rachel's speech continued, outlining the future. This bill would create a future of support, respect, and recognition for the unseen heroes on the other end of the line. She spoke of the dispatcher in Ohio who stayed on the phone with a scared teenager for 2 hours, the one in California who coordinated a massive wildfire evacuation, the one in Florida who guided a frantic father through CPR. Her voice resonated with the truth of 1,000 untold stories. She wasn't just speaking for herself. She was the voice for every dispatcher who ever felt invisible, unappreciated, or broken by the weight of their job. As she finished, the room erupted into a standing ovation that felt like it could shake the very foundations of the Capitol. It wasn't just applause. It was a release of years of frustration, a roar of validation, a thunderous thank you. Later, as the president signed the bill into law, I watched Rachel. I saw the relief, the joy, the exhaustion in her face. We had Don Italiano. From one awful, angry phone call, something beautiful had been born. It was a testament to the fact that it's never too late to change, to learn, to make amends. It's a reminder that our worst moments don't have to define us. They can, if we let them, refine us. They can become the catalyst for our greatest purpose. This journey taught me that true strength isn't about never making mistakes. It's about what you do after you've made them. It's about having the courage to face your failures and the humility to say, "I was wrong. How can I help make it right?" And in making it right, you might just find you're not only changing the world for others, but you're also building a better one for yourself. Marcus Hamilton went from being my harshest critic to my closest colleague, from someone who called me useless to someone who helped prove that I and every other dispatch am essential. That transformation is why we're here today, because Marcus turned his guilt into action, because he used his resources and privilege to advocate for people society often overlooks, because he proved that growth is possible, that change is possible, that we can all be better than we were. This legislation exists because Marcus wouldn't stop pushing. He testified before committees. He lobbied senators. He told his story over and over again, the uncomfortable parts included, to make people understand why dispatchers need support. So, Mr. President, when you sign this bill, know that it represents more than just policy reform. It represents human transformation. It represents what happens when someone admits they were wrong and dedicates themselves to making it right. To dispatchers across America, this law is for you. You are seen. You are valued. You are appreciated, and you are no longer alone. And to Marcus Hamilton, thank you for changing, for fighting, for proving that our worst moments can become catalysts for our greatest contributions. You saved my career. You saved thousands of dispatches from the burnout that almost destroyed me. And you gave me hope that humans are capable of genuine growth. Thank you all, and may this legislation mark the beginning of the recognition dispatchers have always deserved. The applause was thunderous. As Rachel stepped away from the podium, the president moved forward to sign the bill into law. Marcus was crying. Jennifer was crying. Half the room was crying. After the ceremony, Marcus found Rachel in the hallway. That speech was everything you deserved to hear, she interrupted gently. You changed, Marcus. Not just a surface-level apologies change. It was deep, fundamental. Your entire life trajectory changed. That's rare. That's precious. And it needed to be acknowledged. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep fighting, she said, her voice firm but kind. This legislation is a start, but there's more work to do. International reform, technology improvements, cultural change. We're not done. He managed a small smile. We're never done. But Rachel, can we take a moment to celebrate this? To acknowledge what we've accomplished. She looked at him, a real smile finally breaking through. 5 years ago, you called me useless. Today, we changed federal law. Yeah, I think we can celebrate that. They stood together in the Capitol hallway, to people who'd been brought together by cruelty and had built something beautiful from the wreckage. I have something for you, Marcus said, pulling out a small, elegant box. Rachel opened it. Inside was a custom-made medal, beautifully crafted. The inscription read, Rochelle Morrison, America's first responder. You saved my son. You saved me. Thank you. Rachel's hands shook slightly as she held it. Marcus, this is inadequate. I know, but I wanted you to have something that reminded you. You matter. What you do matters. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure everyone knows it. You already have, she whispered, her gaze shifting from the medal to his face. This is your legacy. No, he corrected her softly. This is our legacy. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Your expertise, your patience, your willingness to forgive someone who didn't deserve it. You made this possible. Rachel didn't hesitate. She hugged him tightly. Partners. He returned the hug, his voice thick with emotion. Partners. Always. 10 years later, a 15-year-old Liam Hamilton sat in his first CPR class. The instructor was demonstrating chest compressions when Liam raised his hand. My dad saved my life once. When I was choking, a 911 operator told him what to do. The instructor smiled. That's great that your dad knew what to do. Did he have medical training? No, Liam said. The operator walked him through it, step by step. Her name was Rachel Morrison. She works with my dad now. They started a foundation that helps 911 dispatchers. The instructor paused, a look of recognition on her face. First Voice Foundation? Yeah, you know it, Liam asked, surprised. Know it. Their training programs are what we use nationwide. Rachel Morrison literally wrote the manual we're teaching from. Your dad founded First Voice. Yeah, Liam replied proudly. He says Miss Rachel is the real hero, though. He just helps her help other people. After class, Liam went home and found his dad in the home office, hunched over a laptop, working on a grant proposal. Dad, can I ask you something? Marcus looked up, his expression warm. Of course. Buddy, what's up? My CPR instructor today said you and Miss Rachel are famous. That First Voice is like a really big deal. Marcus chuckled softly. I don't know about famous, but we've helped a lot of people, yeah. How did it start? The real story, not the kid version. Marcus studied his son, really looked at him. 15 years old. Old enough for the truth. He took a deep breath. You really want to know? Yeah. It started on the worst day of my life, Marcus began, his voice quiet. You were 5 years old, and you were choking. I called 911, and I was terrified, panicked. And I was horrible to the dispatcher on the phone. Her name was Rachel Morrison. I yelled at her. I called her useless. I blamed her for everything that was going wrong, but she didn't hang up. She stayed calm. She stayed professional, and she told me exactly what to do to save your life. She saved you, Liam. While I was falling apart, she held everything together. Marco's spouse, the memory's still vivid after all these years. Afterward, I was consumed with guilt. Not just because you almost died, but because of how I treated her. The person who saved my son, I found her, intending to just apologize, but I learned so much more. I learned about the stress dispatchers are under, the lack of resources, the trauma they face with no support. I saw how broken the system was, and I saw how much it was hurting good people like Rachel, people who were saving lives every single day. He looked directly at his son. I had been so wrong, so I decided to use my resources, my connections, everything I had, to help her fix it. The foundation, the legislation, it all started from that one phone call. It started because I was wrong, and she was brave enough to forgive me and work with me to make things right. Miss Rachel isn't just a hero for saving you, Liam. She is a hero for being willing to build something better out of the worst moment of our lives. I just help her help other people. That part's true. Liam was silent for a moment, processing it all. Wow, he finally said. So, Juma set up really bad. Really bad, Marcus confirmed. But then you tried to fix it. I'm still trying, Marcus said. Every day. Liam nodded, a new understanding in his eyes. That's a pretty good story, Dad. It's our story, Marcus said, a small, genuine smile on his face. And it's a story of why we never give up on people. Not on the ones who need saving, and not on the ones who need to be saved from themselves. What's the true story behind your greatest success? Is it a straight line from idea to triumph, or is it a little more complicated? For most of us, the path is full of twists, turns, and even some mistakes we wish we could take back. But what if those mistakes are the very foundation of our purpose? Imagine this. A father, Marcus, and his 15-year-old son, Liam. Liam comes to him one day, curious. He's just learned that his dad's organization, First Voice, is a pretty big deal, and he wants to know the real story behind it, not the simplified version he's always heard. Marcus decides his son is old enough for the truth. He sits him down and takes a deep breath. The story he's about to tell isn't one of flawless vision or easy victory. It's a story born from fear, anger, and a profound mistake. It all started years ago, on the worst day of Marcus's life. His wife, Liam's mom, suddenly collapsed. Panicked, he called 911. A calm, professional voice answered. Her name was Rachel. She did everything by the book, guiding him through what to do, dispatching an ambulance, and trying to keep him steady. But in that moment, Marcus wasn't thinking clearly. All he felt was sheer terror. The ambulance felt like it was taking an eternity. 12 minutes, to be exact. And in his fear and helplessness, Marcus needed someone to blame, so he lashed out at the only person he could. Rachel. He called her useless. He was cruel. After it was all over, he even filed a formal complaint against her. He saw her not as a person trying to help, but as an obstacle, a faceless voice that wasn't solving his problem fast enough. It was easier to be angry at her than to face the terrifying reality of the situation. Liam listened, trying to understand how his dad, a man he admired, could have acted that way. He asked the simple, powerful question. Why? Marcus explained that fear makes people do irrational things. He was desperate and needed a target for his pain. Then, the story takes a turn. Sometime later, another crisis hit. This time, it was little Liam. He was choking. Marcus, once again filled with panic, called 911. And whose voice answered the call? Rachel, the very same dispatcher he had treated so horribly. But Rachel didn't hesitate. She didn't bring up the past. She was the same calm, professional voice of guidance. She walked Marcus through the Heimlich maneuver, step by step. She kept him focused while his adrenaline was surging. She stayed on the line until Liam was breathing again. She saved his son's life. The weight of that moment was immense. Marcus was flooded with a terrible mix of gratitude and shame. The woman he had insulted, whose job he had belittled, had just saved the most precious person in his world. He had been cruel to someone who only ever tried to help, and she responded with grace and professionalism, saving his son despite it all. This was his turning point. He knew he had to make it right. He found Rachel and apologized. Truly, deeply. But he felt that wasn't enough. He needed to do more. He realized that so many people, like him, didn't understand the incredible pressure and importance of a dispatcher's job. They are the first voice you hear in your darkest hour. The calm in the storm. And that's how First Voice was born. Marcus started the organization to support 911 dispatchers, to provide them with better resources and training, but most importantly, to raise public awareness. He wanted everyone to see the human being on the other end of that line, the person who carries the weight of 100 emergencies every single day. Liam sat quietly, processing this incredible story. He finally said, "So you did something bad, realized you were wrong, and spent the rest of your life trying to fix it?" Marcus nodded. Pretty much. Liam's response was simple but profound. That's cool. Most people just stay wrong. Marcus knew how lucky he was. Lucky to have gotten a second chance. Lucky that Rachel had the grace to forgive him. And lucky that his biggest mistake led him to his life's purpose. This conversation sparks something in Liam. He tells his dad he wants to work for First Voice when he's older, to really be a part of its mission. He wants to help people, just like his dad and Miss Rachel do. Marcus is filled with pride. His son is learning one of life's most important lessons, that our lives can be defined not by our mistakes, but by how we choose to grow from them. Later that night, Marcus reflects on this with his wife. He realizes that by dedicating his life to making amends, he didn't just build an organization, he built a legacy of character for his son. He became the example Liam needed. Rachel showed him what forgiveness and grace looked like. And in turn, he was able to show his son what it means to turn a mistake into a mission. This story is a powerful reminder for all of us. We will all make mistakes. We will all have moments we regret, but the real test of our character is what we do next. Do we let our mistakes define us, or do we use them as fuel to become better? To help others, and to build something meaningful. Redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about rewriting the future. Think about your own life. Is there a mistake you can learn from? Is there a moment of failure that could be the seed of your greatest success? Let this story inspire you to look at your own journey with new eyes. Sometimes, the path to finding your purpose begins in the place you least expect it. With a mistake, a second chance, and the courage to make it right. Looking back on the journey, it's hard to believe how it all started. From a panicked, cruel caller to a national advocate. From someone who, in a moment of pure desperation, called a dispatcher useless, to someone who's now spent a decade proving just how essential they are. It's strange, isn't it? I wouldn't change any of it. Not even the terrible parts. Not even being so cruel to Rachel that day. Because those terrible parts, those moments I'm least proud of, they led to everything else. They led to First Voice. They led to federal legislation. They led to thousands of dispatchers getting the help and recognition they deserve. It's how I found my purpose. That's what growth is, I suppose. It's understanding that even our worst moments, the ones that fill us with shame, can become the foundation for our greatest contributions. Rachel said something like that to me once. She said, "My transformation, from her harshest critic to her biggest advocate, was proof that change is possible for anyone, that we can all be better than we were yesterday." And I hope I have been so much better. My kids see Italiano. My wife, Jennifer, sees it. I hope the world sees it. We sat there for a moment, just letting the comfortable silence hang in the air, thinking about the 10 years that had just flown by. All the changes that came with them. The purpose that was salvaged from the wreckage of one terrible, life-altering moment. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Rachel. New grant came through. We can expand training programs to 10 more states. We did it, partner. A smile spread across my face as I typed back, "We did indeed." Celebrating tomorrow. Her reply was instant. Absolutely. First Voice. Happy hour, 6 p.m. Don't be late. Wouldn't miss it. I sent back. I put my phone down and looked over at Jennifer. Rachel got the grant. We're expanding again. She just smiled knowingly. Of course, you are. You too are unstoppable. Maybe we are. But more than that, we're lucky. We're lucky to have found work that truly matters. Lucky to have built something so meaningful from the ground up. Incredibly lucky that one terrible phone call became the unlikely beginning of something so beautiful. It's not luck, Jennifer said, her voice soft but firm. It's choice. You chose to change. You chose to grow, to be better. That's not luck, Katat's character. I let her words sink in. Character. I thought about the man I'd been all those years ago, panicked. Cruel. So quick to place blame on anyone but myself. And then I thought about the man I am now. Purposeful, compassionate, and dedicated to serving others. Maybe Jennifer was right. Maybe it wasn't just a series of fortunate events. Maybe it was the sum of countless daily choices. The choice to be a little better today than I was yesterday. The choice to see the human being on the other end of the line. Not just an obstacle to my own frantic needs. It was the choice to take that crushing guilt and transform it into positive action. The choice to turn my absolute worst moment into my greatest, most lasting contribution. My name is Marcus Hamilton. 10 years ago, I called a 911 operator useless, and then I spent the next decade of my life proving she was essential. And you know what? That's a pretty good way to spend a decade. Maybe even a pretty good way to spend a life. Thank you for listening to my story. If you found it inspiring, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories about growth and transformation. See you next time.